So if you're going to live in a storage unit, you're going to need to be as invisible as you possibly can be. You basically need to be a ghost. If anybody finds out you're here, that's when you start running into trouble. So first of all, I needed power for my unit. So what I did is I ran an extension cord along the power cable up here, and I sort of zip tied it up. So you can't really tell its power is going to my unit unless you are looking closely. So this is my unit here, and at the top of the unit you can see I have an antenna, and that's so I can get a cell signal inside the unit itself, because once you close the door it drops all signal. I have a lock which I've magnetized onto the door so it looks like it's locked even when it's not. And then when I actually do want to lock it, I can just use this lock or use another one down here and leave that one there. Alright, so let's take a look at the unit now. So in here I've got my TV, entertainment center set up there. I've got my bed. I've got my kitchen area over there, complete with a fridge, and my couch over here. Once you're inside here, you can close the door. And I've screwed on a latch here, so that way you can close it and sort of lock it from the inside. I've also put a mirror up so you can see what you're doing. Up here I've got a toaster oven, and this toaster oven actually works pretty well. I'd say it works just as well as a conventional oven. I've got some dishes over here. Got some more pots and pans over here, and my fridge is right here. Underneath I've got a filing cabinet, some tools, and some storage for some other stuff I have. Up on this part of the kitchen I have cutting board so I can make some lunch or dinner there. I have a hot plate for boiling water, cereal. Up here is the Tupperware, and then over here I've got a food cupboard for all my food. And this is the sink I've built, and the sink is basically like a 25-liter container filled with water, and I've attached these tubes here, so you just open it up, then the water comes down this tube and out there. So you've got running water, you can do dishes, get a drink, whatever, and then the water filters into this bucket, which goes down into these holes here, which goes into a funnel, which leads...
Yo, you good in there? Yeah, I'm just moving things around. What do you mean you're moving things around? Yo, can't be sleeping in here, bro. It's a storage facility.
Bro, you're disturbing my workplace.
Nah, bro, you can't sleep here, bro.
Bro, please don't kick me out, bro. Please don't kick me
You got about 5 minutes to get out, my friend. You got about 5 minutes to get out, my
All right. So it seems as though we are in I would say an affordability crisis. You know, especially if you see everyday Americans having to resort to living in a storage unit. You know, that in itself speaks volumes, right? Because, you know, from the outside looking in, you know, people from other countries, they see America as a beacon of light. You know, and I think some of those people would be surprised to come to America and see that Americans are, you know, living in storage units or homeless. you know. Yeah, because again, to those people, some might assume that, you know, we're just picking gold off the streets and things of that nature, but that's not the case for average, everyday Americans, right? Now, when you see Americans having to resort to living in a storage unit, it just says a lot, right? And that's not the only type of alternative living Americans are resorting to. Some are living in those storage units. You know, some are living in tents. I remember I used to see a lot of tents popping up all over the city and the District of Columbia. I'm from DC or whatever, so you know, that in itself was surprising to see, right? And not just the tents, but also, you know, what I'm seeing is people living in vans or in their cars. I even remember there was like a wooded or creek area where, you know, there was somebody like kind of staying in the woods over there where I was living. So that was just strange in itself, you know. And what's interesting is that a lot of people aren't paying attention to one of the age demographics that are being hit the most by all of this inflation, which happens to be the elderly, right? Because in many cases, the elderly have outlived a majority of their friends and family, where if they might have fell on hard times, they might have been able to go and stay with a friend or a family member until, you know, you kind of got back on your feet. But once you reach like 60, 65 and older, you kind of have to have all of your ducks in a row, right? Because, you know, nobody wants to hire anybody in that age demographic on average. And on top of that, I mean, even if you're hired, like, you just lack the basic ability to be able to perform your duties or what's expected of you at those jobs, right? And it's just sad, to say the least, right? Now, a lot of the people that you see having to resort to these types of living alternatives are those who we might say aren't really prepared for inflation, you know, and the rising cost of things. Where, I mean, it does make absolute sense, right? Because when you're an average, everyday working individual, you really don't have the time or the interest to, you know, want to delve into things like economics and politics, right? Even though those things impact your day-to-day life and play a huge role into, you know, what you'll actually be able to afford, right? And now it looks like we're about to have to turn back on the money printer and start back printing more money to ease stress on the economy, which is going to cause inflation to go up. And if you combine that also with the tariffs, that also causes inflation to kind of go up. So that doesn't make things any better, you know. And when everybody was receiving, you know, all of those stimulus checks, you know, for the big flu, I don't really want to name it because I don't want to get my channel flagged. But, you know, people were receiving stimulus checks PPP loans and things of that nature. And now, I would say, that played a major role into why things are so expensive now, right? Where we could say the chickens have come home to roost and all of that, and I don't know what to say, but it's just sad to, again, have to see people living in a storage unit, and, that's actually not safe, especially if you're inside, you're cooking or you're lighting propane tanks and candles. It's a huge fire hazard, but, I get it. You still have to eat, even though that might be where you're lodging, And I don't know. I would say hopefully we're able to figure all of this out. But, average people, they don't necessarily have the time, the energy, or the will to have to pay attention to these types of issues, and it's just sad again. It really is. So I guess let me know you guys' thoughts on all of this. Do you know anybody who might be on hard times? If you do, help out the best way you can. Offer food, clothing, just anything helps, right? And sometimes you might see people who don't appear to need help, when in reality they do need help, right? So even if you think somebody doesn't need help, it wouldn't hurt to ask and say, hey, do you need a helping hand? Because I feel as though as Americans, we're gonna have to start helping each other more, right? Yeah. We're gonna have to start helping each other more, right? Or to kind of try to help each other ease the pain of, these financial hardships, right? And yeah, that's just my basic thoughts on it, if that makes sense. And I guess, yeah, let me know your thoughts again. Subscribe to the channel, and we're out.